Terumah, Parshas Terumah, we have the creation of the Mishkan. Creation of the Mishkan. Famously, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Klal Yisrael to make for me a home. Make for me a home. And Yichuli Terumah, to bring something as a donation to create the Mishkan. And then the Torah goes along to list all the different types of donations you could potentially give. Zav, gold, kesef, silver, necheshes, tcheles, agama, telas, shani, sheish, v'izim, continues iris elim, different hides, atzi shitim, wood, shemen lama'ar, oil, besamin l'shemen ha-mishcha, ulik teiris ha-samim. What's the final thing in the list? Avnei shoyham, va'avnei miluim, la'ifoid v'lacheshem. And inquiring minds wonder that the psukim are out of order. It seems like it's going in order of value. Gold, silver, copper. But in reality, the Avnei Shoyam, the stones, were worth the most. So why are the stones listed last? And this is in reality, this is the question of the Ar Chaim HaKadosh over here. The Ar Chaim wonders that what is the reason that we're listing the stones last. And says the Ar Chaim, a beautiful idea, it's a basic idea, but when you have someone like the Ar Chaim speaking it out, really gives it a lot more credibility, and it means a lot more. It says, Oy nirei kota gemar in Yuma. Where did the Avnei Shoyam come from? So famously, they came from Hananim, the clouds, Hayamivim is Avnei Shoyam. The clouds came and they rained down these Avnei Shoyam. Imkain, where did they come from? They didn't come from man, they came from God. Mishulchan Gavaya Hayamivim, they came straight up from heaven. Beloi Tairach V'yegia V'loi Chisaron Kis. The Avnei Shoyam require no toil, no effort, and no loss of money. Asher al Kain, therefore, says the Ar Chaim, Seder Nidvasam Acher Kol HaNidavos. It comes last. Shemeviin Mikisam, because everything else came from their pocket. You had to bring gold, it costed you money. You had to bring oil, it costed you money. You brought even wood, it costed money. But these Avnei Shoyam were free, and therefore it comes last because it required no effort. From here we see and we learn the obvious idea that that which is more effort is that which is desired and loved by Hashem. We know when it comes to karbanos, what does Hashem ask for? Hashem asks for whatever you could bring. Not necessarily does it have to be the most expensive item, but the more tayrach, the more yegia, the more hard work you put in, that is what is desired by Hashem. And therefore, even though the Avnei Shoyam were the most expensive, they are listed last. They're listed last. So utilizing this idea, let's continue with a wonderful line from Ramosha Feinstein. We had an Aron. The Aron was a box, 3 boxes, gold wood gold, very good, with the keruvim on top, with their hands spread out, angelic figures made out of gold. Now the keruvim and the Aron were very unique. They fit in the Kodesh HaKodashim without actually fitting. They didn't take up any space. Or Moshe Feinstein over here quotes the Gemara in Yuma that the Aron was Einay Min Amida. If you did the math, how big the keruvim were, and how much area there was in the Kodesh HaKodashim, and how big the box was, it doesn't fit. So how in the world did this thing fit inside the Kodesh HaKodashim? The answer was, B'nei Sayyimdim, it stood with a miracle. Says Ramosha quoting a Gemara in Yuma. But then continues Ramosha and says, let's open up the Aron. We take off the top, we take off the preiches, the kapayres, we take off the keruvim, and what's inside? What's inside the Aron were the luchais. Were the luchais. We find the Gemara in Baba Basra on Daf Yudalid that the luchais fit perfectly inside the Aron. The Gemara in Baba Basra goes at length to figure out the exact size of the luchais, and it fits inside absolutely perfectly. A machlekes, whether the shivrei luchais where they were, was there a sefer Torah inside the Aron? Okay, but it fits perfectly. Ask Ramosha, I don't understand. The Aron itself is in the Kodesh HaKodashim, and it takes up no space. But the Torah, the luchais, is in the Aron, and it fits perfectly. It makes no sense. We would have thought the opposite. We would think that the Torah inside shouldn't be able to fit. It should take up no space. So explains Ramesha a beautiful idea. And this, when we put this together with the thought that everything has to do with the tircha, everything has to do with the hard work, everything has to do with what it costed you, whether it's time, whether it's energy, says Ramesha, our insides have to be 100% filled with Torah. 100% filled. As we see, the luchais were inside, and they filled it up perfectly. Outside, our externals take up no space. The person that is so filled with Torah, he's incredible. Ramesha Feinstein himself. But when he walks in the room, you don't even know he's there. So the Aron's inside was filled to the brim, but externally, he took up no space. So when we hear this, it's difficult to understand on multiple levels, because what does it mean that someone, such a gadol, takes up no space? What exactly does it mean, for example, that, we know Moshe Rabbeinu was an Anam Mikol Adam? What exactly does it mean? So the way that I understood this the most is my first day in the Mir. This goes back, I don't know, let's go 12 years ago, ballpark. And in Beis Shalom, which is Rav Asher Arieli's Beis Medrash, Lily, go upstairs, please. Which is Rav Asher Arieli's Beis Medrash. And it's a little bit of a chavrus, a tumult, not like the levels of Lakewood, but okay, everyone's, a little bit pushing and shoving and trying to figure out what's going on. And I'm standing there in an aisle. And, first day there, don't really know anyone, and sort of being swayed a little bit back and forth. And then all of a sudden, I'm pushed into a seat. Okay, so I'm standing and my back is leaning against the stender, and I'm just waiting a minute. Someone motions to me and says, move away. I'm like, oh, move away. Okay, so I walk away, and he points like who's behind there? I look there. There's some older man, a nice beard. Like that's Rav Asher. I'm like, what? That's Rav Asher Eli? Smack in the middle of, it's like classical mirror. Only in the mirror did these things fly. He's not in the front, he's not in the back. Smack in the middle of the Beis Medrash. I don't know, it's 12 benches back. First, you're just sitting there learning. You're sitting there learning. When you see a person like that, you could understand what does it mean. Einoi min amin, he takes up no space. Takes up no space, and there's so many stories. We could tell stories all night. But the point is that our avoida is to be filled with Torah. But now the question is, what do you mean, filled with Torah? Come on, let's be honest. Let's be real for a moment. I'm going to be filled with Torah. Sounds like a very high bar. So now let's put that together with what we learned about the Avnei Shayam. Now what does Hashem want? Hashem wants yikiyah, tircha. He wants hard work. He wants us to show we're working, we're trying as much as possible. Which comes out ironic. There could be someone who's extremely bright, extremely smart, and he could sit down and in 20 minutes, fly through a blot or two of Gemara. And there could be another person that sits for the same 20 minutes, learns 4 lines of Gemara, and it was really difficult for him. The Orach Chaim is teaching us that Avnei Shayam were worth a lot more money. Maybe they're like that smart guy that learned so much more, but it's listed last. Because Hashem wants our tircha, Hashem wants our yigiyah. And I like to continue this with a fascinating fun fact. I don't know how famous this is, so you never know which parts are famous, which parts are not. The Krushim, which are the beams in the side of the Mishkan, are held up. What are they held up by? There is a piece of wood, a pole, that goes straight through all 3 walls of the Mizbeach. This pole is called the Briach HaTichon. Does anyone know where the Briach HaTichon came from? Anyone know? Yeah. Okay. So, I don't know if this is famous, but the Daskenim Mivali Taisus says the following, and it's going to get more wild than that. So again, we have a pole that is running straight through, and obviously it's interesting because it's curving. It's going around the curve. Okay, a wooden pole that's going, it's a nace obviously, that's going through the entire Mishkan, around and coming back around. Where did this piece of wood come from? Says the Daskenim Mibali Taisus. It's a medrash. Shahabriach HaTichon Haya Mimakoloi Shel Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu ki b'makli avarti es hayardin hazeh. Yaakov Avinu, as he's walking away, he has a walking stick. That walking stick was the eventual Briach HaTichon. Okay, interesting. Where did the crushing come from? The Atzei Shitiv. Where in the world did they get wood in the middle of the midbar? The wood all the way back. Very good. From Yaakov. Some say went all the way back to Avram Avinu. That they had the foresight and they brought it. If you think how far this wood traveled, that means they went down to Mitzrayim. They're carrying these big cedar trees and they planted the cedar trees in Mitzrayim. It's a wonderful level in Amunah. Imagine a kid sitting there in Mitzrayim. They're there for 100 years so far. And Dad, what's going on in the backyard? Why do we get these trees growing? Oh, we were told that one day we're going to need wood to build a house for God. It's like, sounds like ridiculous. And that wood was the wood that built the Mishkan. Literally a beautiful lesson in Amunah. But the Briach HaTichain was Yaakov Avinu's walking stick. Okay. Now is where it gets wild. There's a Rishon. His name is the Paneach Raza. It's a Rishon, I think it's only on Chumash. And in Bereshis, the Pasuk says, V'yitzoik shemen al roisha. Asks this Rishon, the Paneach Raza, V'kasha, Halo Elifaz ben Esav, Radav Acharav, ran after Yaakov Avinu, V'gazal mimenu kol asher lai. So Yaakov Avinu was running away. Elifaz meets him and takes all his stuff. So ask the Paneach Raza, how did Yaakov have oil to pour as this carbon, as this libation to Hashem? Where did he get it from? Says the Paneach Raza, fascinating. V'yesh laimar, dibim makoloi, he was left with his walking stick. That's what the pasuk says. That's the only thing he had left. In the makoloi nishar loi, kidachsev kivamarkli avarti is yardin azeh. So it's the only thing Yaakov Avinu had? A walking stick. So where's the oil? Says the Paneach Raza, v'huaya chalol. The walking stick was hollow. She'evio imoy tamid malei shemen. Yaakov Avinu walked around with a stick filled with oil. Why? Why do you walk around with a stick filled with oil? What's it like, the primitive hip flask, just in case he needs a drink? It's oil. Says the Paneach Raza, shahaya lei lahadlik lilmay Torah. Wherever he was, he had a little bit of oil, he could light a candle and learn Torah. In the walking stick, he hid oil. So after he was left with nothing, all he had is a stick. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Yaakov Avinu could go, open the stick, take out a little oil, light up a wick, and sit and learn. That was the walking stick that many years later was used as the support beam for the Mishkan with this wood that was transported for hundreds of years, teaching us the Messiah. What do we see? What's this oil that Yaakov Avinu has? Yaakov Avinu is teaching us. And I heard the last week of Asher Weiss from Eretz Yisrael, where Zeichi came down to Cross River Bank, and he spoke to everyone. He speaks beautifully, and he said the following line, which sounds very light, but if you think about it, it's extremely heavy. He says, "How much does one have to learn? How much you have to learn?" So he said, and this is a Mishnah Berurah, and it's a stapler, and it's all or whatever. Whenever you have time, you have to learn. So if you think about it, that's it. Okay, it sounds easy when I have time. The question is, you're supposed to make time to learn. I never have time. I have to watch this movie and I have to go here. No, that's not the point. But what do we see from Yaakov Avinu? Yaakov Avinu, the quintessential Mesiras Nefesh and Asmada and Yegiya and Ta'ir, he always carried a little flashlight with him that he could learn. That level of Asmada, Yegiya, and toil was that which was inside this stick, which was put inside the Krushim to hold up the Mishkan, this house that we built for God. And from here we conclude with the words of the Chafetz Chaim. Says the Chafetz Chaim, what did Hashem tell us? Build for me a Mishkan. Build for me a Mishkan. Did Hashem really believe we could build him a Mishkan? Could we build a house for God? Sounds ridiculous. Sounds absolutely ridiculous. I'm going to build something for Hashem? It's abnormal. Says the Chafetz Chaim, Hashem is telling us, you do what your part is, and I'll finish the rest. What is a house of Hashem? It's impossible. What, we're going to build a stadium? What, we build MetLife? That's not what Hashem wants from us. The Mishkan was almost symbolic that we as human beings do as much as we can, and then Hashem says, you did what you could do? Beautiful. I'll take care of the rest. Where do we see that? That's this Briach HaTichain. That's the walking stick. That's the stick that Yaakov Avinu carried, always trying to push himself a little bit further. That's the Arachayim, that what matters. It's not the Avnei Shayim. It's not that it's so valuable. It's how much did you put in? How much effort was it to you? And that's your Moshe Feinstein, that we have to fill ourselves up. How much can we fill ourselves up with? As much as we can, a little bit more, a little bit extra, a little bit tircha, a little bit more, a little bit extra oil, an extra minute. And I heard, I saw my notes, I have no clue who this was from. Apparently I one time heard a shmooze, and it was someone talking to Bali Tshuva, and this we conclude, and he was telling Bali Tshuva about learning Torah, Sifos, and you have to learn, and the way I had written in my notes is, as I was listening to this, I thought this guy's crazy. Tell a bunch of Bali Tshuva to learn Torah, Sifas. Like, well, what are you telling them? Yeah, sit and learn for 10 hours straight. But then I continued listening, and this person, whoever he was, told these Bali Tshuva, what does it mean, Sifas? It means consecutively. Consecutive could be hours, days, or minutes, or even seconds. If you learn for 60 consecutive seconds, you learn for a minute. And in the world of technology, as it develops, how many times do we pick up something in the middle of doing something else? That's called not Ritzifas. So the extra Yigia Hasmada is what? It doesn't have to be 5 hours. It could be 5 minutes. It could be 2 minutes. It could be 10 minutes. It could be an hour. Each person onto their own. But the lesson of the Avnei Shayam is teaching us, how can we fill ourselves up? How can we be the Aroin filled with Torah? As much as we could push a little bit more. And if we could take a little bit extra oil out of that walking stick that Yaakov Avinu carried, that could hold up these Atzei Shitim, that could hold up the Mishkan, that's the way to build a house of Hashem. The house of Hashem is not built with necessarily the person that knows Kol HaTorah Kula. It's built with the person that tries a little bit more, a little bit higher, harder. And V'siyata D'Shmaya, the ultimate bracha that we can have is that if we do a little bit more, if we tell Hashem, it's difficult, a little bit more. The Avnei Shayim, we're easy. No, we're going to do a little bit more. We'll donate a little more, whether it's time, whether it's effort, when it's energy. Ultimately, what will we be zeicha to? That Hashem will look at us and Hashem will say, I'll take my Shechina and I'll put it in your house. And there can be no greater bracha than having the Shechina in our homes.